About a year ago, I made a video ranking every original killer in Dead by Daylight by how powerful they were lore-wise. But with the casting of Frank Stone releasing, I figured there was no better time to revamp the topic. This time including every licensed killer since there's only been one original chapter in the last year. Hey, if this becomes a yearly thing, I'll throw in the legendary skins alongside Freddy Fazbear next time. So I'll be ranking every killer from weakest to strongest by how powerful they are while in the entity's realm. We do know that the entity is capable of giving and taking power as it pleases, so some powerful licensed characters are made weaker for the purpose of the trials. Also, I'll only be taking their base cosmetics into account, since some killers get crazier weapons or whatever, and just to make it more uniform overall. Although I'm not ranking them by who beats who per se, each killer ranked should consistently beat the ones below them at least 5.1 out of 10 times. But just like last time, I'll quickly explain why I feel each killer would beat the one below them. I'll take a look at their backstories, lore from tomes and flavor text, and canon films for the versions we see in game to determine who is the most powerful killer in Dead by Daylight. There's 15 more entries than last time, so strap in, it's gonna be a long one.
And then, stick around for a steak dinner! Come on, let's go in, shall we?
As much as it pains me to place my favorite character from Saw at the bottom, the pig, or Amanda Young, coming in last shouldn't come as a surprise. We have these literal supervillains with crazy powers, so the more human characters will no doubt be lower on the list. And Amanda is certainly the most human out of these human characters. She has no impressive physical feats to come from the series aside from her general resilience. She beats a malnourished, one-footed Eric Matthews, barely. The argument can be made that the entity gave her a short burst of speed for her ambush attack, but it just won't be enough here. And there's no way she could reliably get any of her reverse bear traps on any other killer. Easy bottom spot.
You are a toy! You weren't the real Buzz Lightyear, you're an action figure!
I did consider putting Chucky at the very bottom, but I figured he had the edge over Amanda in experience when it comes to fighting. That being said, he is literally just a doll. He has the strength of a full-grown man, which is something, but he's lost 1v1s with actual children, so he really couldn't be any higher. He can be, and has been, punted like a football.
Let's pre-drop. Okay, free hit. That's what we wanted to happen.
The Legion is a group of 4 teens that the entity picked up after they killed a dude. They have no notable feats outside of the realm. Some lore attached to cosmetics imply that they may have stabbed a few people before, but that's about it. Susie and Joey are pretty normal with less than ideal home lives, while Julie and Frank fantasize about leaving their mark on the world in a horrific manner. While in the realm, they have their feral frenzy. While in it, they have increased movement speed along with an increase to their general ferocity, at the cost of having this sort of tunnel vision. They can only hold it for so long before suffering a stun, where they slow down and their vision goes dark. Subsequent hits on the same person while in feral frenzy have the same effect, although you can make the case that this is for gameplay balance only. At the end of the day, they're slightly faster teens with a knife, and they're only threatening because you don't have one. If ranking them individually, I'd put Susie, then Joey last, both being reluctant to kill and basically just dragged into the realm, then Julie finding the whole killing thing fascinating, and Frank at top since he's the group's ringleader, and the first contacted by the entity. I even read the Legion comic for this video. Nothing groundbreaking, but I recommend it if you're even slightly interested.
What's wrong with me?
Look at your fatness.
You ain't a prize.
You know, the clown's kinda built like the girls I'm into. The clown is described as a large guy who's surprisingly fast for his size, for whatever that's worth. He brings his afterpiece tonic and antidote to the trials. The tonic releases a large cloud of purple gas that slows and disorientates anyone that breathes it in, although the clown himself is immune to his own gas, at least in the realm. The antidote has the opposite effect, creating a large yellow cloud that makes everyone who breathes it in faster and removes the effect of the tonic. Although it may help with the clown's own movement speed, I don't see it reliably coming into play in a battle setting. He is strong, but described as sloppy and lazy, which was going to lead to his arrest until the entity scooped him up. The Benedict Baker entry stated that he and the clown spotted each other, but the clown seems to prefer that his victims are less aware of his presence, implying that he isn't used to fair 1v1 confrontations. Hell, he barely killed a guy he had captured in his caravan. Off topic, but I really miss the Benedict Baker entries. I prefer the first-person narrator in the fray over the third-person omniscient storytelling of the archives. The Legion members are definitely quicker than the clown, but his tonic should kick them out of their frenzy, which is their only trump card.
This is my vestigial twin. I named him Chip. You know, like chip off the old neck. I like to poke him because it makes him happy, and I feel it a little bit in my nads.
Pixel Bush's prides and joys round out the bottom 5. The twins aren't much of fighters. Charlotte always avoided conflict at all costs, but she got that big girl strength, since she was able to overpower a large man on top of her when she felt that Victor was in danger. The little can run around really fast and pounce on people. He is really frail though. Survivors can kill him with a kick or by throwing him on the floor. He has the ability to be resurrected more or less in Charlotte after a few seconds, so to get rid of him, you have to get rid of her. It might be tricky to take the two of them on at the same time, but anyone able to overpower Charlotte or a fighter that's skilled enough should be able to do her in no issue. Like I said earlier, the clown isn't used to fighting people who are aware of him, let alone someone on his level of strength. Charlotte could possibly take him on her own. Victor gnawing on his back at the same time would just be overkill. You know, I was actually gonna leave the music in here, but music copyright is a and a half, so dynamite, oh, there you go. The K-pop star gone crazy is up next. He has the luxury of having a weapon that actually looks threatening. Okay, wait, Charlotte's sickle actually looks really cool. What really sets him apart is his skill in throwing knives. He's able to accurately throw them at high speeds from long distances. His main event ability allows him to throw these knives at rapid fire for a few seconds before suffering a similar cooldown to the Legion. He's definitely not on par with a few of the previous entries in terms of pure physicals, but his ability to keep the fight at a long range should give him the edge against those previously mentioned. Victor would quickly go down to a single knife, and a main event might not be enough to kill Charlotte. If not, it'll certainly weaken her enough to finish her off with an axe bat to the head.
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
If you've seen any of my other videos, you know how I feel about this killer. Hate to watch her set up her drones, but love to watch her proxy camp me. The Skull Merchant has 6 drones at her disposal which detect people in its range, and it's a drone, with a camera, so she can use it to track people. Survivors in its radius for too long are hit with claw traps that leave them broken. Killers to survivors obviously aren't one-to-one, and there's no way of knowing what real effects DBD status effects equate to. Like, what the fuck does exposed do? We can only assume that these would have some sort of debilitating effect on the killer hit with it. While in her drone's radius, Adriana becomes undetectable and gains the haste effect, making her extra fast and extra sneaky. She has a silly little tracksuit, as well as robo-claws ripped straight out of a Predator movie. She did prey on some whoever's. It's still fair to assume that she's a skilled fighter, since she was able to hunt and kill an ex-military dude in her most dangerous game arena. The Trickster versus the Skull Merchant will be a pretty fun fight to watch, I feel. Someone animate that. He might be able to keep her at bay with his knives in an open area, but I feel like she can get the drop on him when she has some drone set up. And she definitely wiped the floor with him in a close quarters fight.
Oh jeez, Rick, whoa, this isn't good.
Nothing but fear from here on out, bitch.
Okay, alright, everyone calm down, please. Oh, I know I made you upset, okay, but you know I don't like it when you yell at me. Anyways, okay, hear me out for just one moment. Yes, I know Freddy Krueger is powerful, especially if ranking him based on his composite feats across the franchise. But this Freddy is not Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger. This is the 2010 reboot version without some of the nuttier feats or scaling to other characters like Jason Voorhees or Ash Williams. And even so, he confirms that his powers were tinkered with by the entity, weakened in some and strengthened in others. But since gameplay is all we have to go off of, it was weakened everywhere. One thing that was given to him was the fact that every survivor he's up against will eventually fall asleep. But he doesn't have any of his dream world manipulation aside from his ability to create fake pallets and teleport to generators. He can also create pools of blood that grab at whoever walks over them, but only while they're sleeping. He's just a burned victim with a claw hand while in the real world, which he's constantly in here in the realm. He does still have his above average strength, more or less, so he should be able to do the hand bursty thing on less durable killers. But he lost a 1v2 against some extremely sleep deprived teens. I couldn't place him any higher without his stronger abilities.
Whoa, is that blackface, dude?
No, this isn't blackface. I'm an actual demon.
Bro, please tell me that's not blackface. Not cool, man.
I'm not too sure if this will come as a shock, but out of all classic slasher icons, Leatherface is easily one of, if not the weakest. He's certainly strong, way stronger than your average guy, but he's, how do I say this? Not the brightest tool in the shed. I almost got you, didn't I? But don't worry, I'm trying to be a content creator. I can't afford to use a word that a large community sees as a slur. What do you think I am? Retarded? He's been put on the ropes by people who are physical back to him, but he's a big boy who's able to chop people in half with his chainsaw. He's pretty human in terms of durability and speed, but he should be able to straight up overpower those under him, especially since he has the most dangerous weapon on the list so far.
What? Chocolate! I can't hear you! They're selling chocolate! They're selling chocolate! Yeah.
Hag's a bit of an outlier for this part of the video since she's far from human, but all she has with her in the realm are her phantasm traps. After drawing a symbol on the ground, anyone who runs or walks by it summons a phantasm or a fake version of herself which she could teleport to at will. Before she was taken, she had access to a few other symbols that increase things like luck, but I'd argue that she's much too far gone at this point to utilize them, since she's just an animalistic, growling, gurgling tree monster now. But her phantasms would scare and overwhelm Bubba, and Hag has the AP to stab straight through survivors with her claw and tear into them, so Leatherface most likely gets eaten in a cruel twist of fate.
Just like Gary Cooper, huh?
Crazy how far a gun will get you. The Deathslinger makes it this far with the help of his Redeemer. It's essentially a harpoon gun with a railroad spike and a bayonet attached to the gun. Before being taken into the realm, he was shown to be a great shot and a proficient fighter. He's able to hit his targets from long distances in the dead of night. We also see his skill in hand-to-hand fighting in his tome cutscene. He's pretty lanky and still has a limp, so he's not on par with some other killers in terms of physicals. But his experience and skill in shooting and fighting would give him the edge. Hag vs Deathslinger could go different ways depending on the scenario. Pretty sure I had Hag over him last video, actually, and it'd definitely be hard for him to fight her off in close quarters. He is skilled enough to do so though, and keeping her at bay with the range attacks would likely lead to him winning.
I saw the sign, and it opened up my eyes. I saw the sign.
Plague is a tricky one to play since there's a pretty solid difference in power between her with her Vile Purge and her with her Corrupt Purge. Our Vommy Mommy can puke on survivors, which eventually gets them so sick they become broken. They violently throw up and leave a cartoonish stank aura around them and the things they touch. This works well enough to hinder survivors trying to get away, but against someone trying to kill you, it wouldn't be more than a gross annoyance. But her Corrupt Purge does knock her up a peg. Same idea as her Vile Purge, except now it actually damages whoever it touches. Exactly how damaging is unclear since I doubt it's as acidic as something like Xenomorph blood. And another issue is the fact that she only starts with one corrupted fountain in any given map, which she would have to find and drink from before throwing down with whoever she was up against. On top of that, being stunned with a pallet knocks her out of her Corrupt Purge, so it stands to reason that taking heavy damage from a killer would have a similar effect. Her puke should be enough to take out most of the earlier killers, but I should mention that she's also able to suck the souls out of survivors in her DBD mobile Moris. I couldn't find anything in her lore or cosmetics that mentioned her ability to suck the soul out of people, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious to try it for myself.
Okay, that's better. You know, teleporting or blinking looks easy, but it's actually bloody painful. Why do you think I make that horrible screeching sound? I'm in agony every time I do it.
The nurse has always worn the crown as the best killer in Dead by Daylight, although few have gotten close. When brought into the fog, Sally was given a sort of telekinesis. It's very weak though, only allowing her to slowly float around, break down breakable doors and generators, and grab and lift survivors, putting her physicals around the base level of the rest of the roster. She can also blink or teleport short distances, through floors, walls, people, whatever. She only gets 2 max before going into a fatigue, since every time she teleports, it pains her. She can't zip around the map tagging everyone every second like she's an Enderman or something, but as we see in her cosmetics, she can take an insane amount of damage without being hindered by it. Most notably her improvised steel cosmetic set, where she even yanks out multiple bits of steel to make a weapon. Her telekinesis is definitely strong enough to hold off the Plague's purge, and her abilities and durability give her a leg up on her.
How about the edgies?
Ew, that sounds like some gross award show. I'd watch.
The Legion, as a team of 4, wins due to the power of friendship. The 4 can pretty handily just jump the killers before them. Feral Frenzy's downsides are mitigated by there being multiple of them, and most killers here wouldn't survive the repeated stabbings. But a killer who could just shrug off stab wounds and or pick them off one by one shouldn't have too much of an issue with them, because again, they're just human. The nurse could certainly take out 2 or even 3 of them with her telekinesis and higher durability, but her constant fatigues would leave her open to a fatal attack. DBD's poster boy gets the 24th spot. His problem in-game still reigns true here. Even though all these other killers have their fancy abilities that take about 30 minutes of reading comprehension, all the trapper gets are his bear traps. It won't be enough to catch most killers off guard, but what puts him even this high is his strength and endurance. We can assume he's strong based on his perk Brutal Strength, and he was also able to momentarily fight off the entity's spider legs. This of course doesn't scale him to the entity because duh, but it's still impressive. His Neptune's failure cosmetic shows us how a boat motor disemboweled him him, but he was still able to push through and kill whoever was trying to get away. His traps would likely catch a few of the Legion members while they're in their feral frenzy, but he's tough enough to ignore the stabs they could get off on him.
What's up?
Ghostface being this high may be a bit of a surprise, especially if going off of the movies alone, but Behavior made their own take on the character Danny Johnson, a Ghostface who has yet to be brutally killed by a final girl. Danny's much smarter than his movie counterparts, methodically killing each of his victims while evading arrest for years at the point that he was taken. His power in the realm allows him to go undetectable and stare at survivors until they become exposed. Again, this might be gameplay, but I personally like to believe that the entity gives life to what it perceives from its killers. Ghostface stalks people in real life, then kills them. So in the realm, he stalks survivors, then one-shot downs them. He's also surprisingly strong. Even before being taken, he was strong enough to decapitate someone by stabbing him. And within the realm, he was impaled by a huge ice shard and still carried on as if nothing happened, as we see in his Icebound Phantom cosmetic. He definitely wouldn't be caught in one of the Trapper's traps, and even though he's stronger than Ghostface, I think Danny could survive the Trapper's attacks, if he doesn't expose and kill the Trapper before a fight even begins.
Phasing between dimensions has shown Wraith the outcome of every single choice.
Try not to blink.
Now we can get into the more supernatural killers. The Wraith has the ability to cloak and uncloak whenever he rings his bell. While uncloaked, he's practically invisible, undetectable, and moves faster than normal. Coming out of his cloak, he gets a burst of speed. Even before he was taken, he was able to rip his boss's spine straight out of his back. We see in an extra tome that the Wraith was strong enough to pick a man up with a single arm, then kill him. So we know that he has some level of superhuman strength. His main weakness is that while in his cloak, he can't attack. He also suffers extra long stuns when hit with a pallet or perk like head on. So I'm sure a hatchet to the sternum would have a similar effect. I doubt Ghostface could mark Wraith while he's cloaked, so unfortunately your crush gets overpowered. I initially thought that the Spirit would be much higher on the list, but from here on out the competition gets pretty steep. She is a trained fighter, at least with her sword, which she can summon out of her arm whenever she chooses. Her haunt ability allows her to phase walk. She can't see anyone and they can't see her, but they can hear a hum coming from her direction. Despite being a ghostly apparition, she's not intangible. She can be stunned with pallets even while phasing, so a perceptive killer can catch her with the reaction time to do so. The Spirit has pretty impressive combat speed, utilizing her phase ability while she attacks, so everyone before her just gets outclassed by her fighting ability.
I am a surgeon! Dr. Hahn, I am a surgeon!
Unlike the Spirit, the Doctor doesn't have any formal fighting training, but he does have the ability to project electricity. Each shock slowly turns survivors crazy. Max Madness causes them to see illusions of the Doctor and stops them from doing objectives until they snap out of it. This would surely have some kind of negative effect on the killer if they too were in Tier 3 madness. And he can straight up fry people if he's close enough. He's able to shoot it directly in front of him or create a large blast in a 32-meter radius which causes anyone hit by it to scream. He's also able to take insane amounts of punishment no issue. He's mutilated himself for the sake of science and only laughs when stunned. His blast should knock the Spirit out of her power, and enough madness should equalize the difference in fighting ability.
What'll it be, fellas? Mustard or ketchup?
Billy ranks much higher than his cannibal counterpart due to his insane strength. Like Bubba Sawyer, Old Max can one-shot any random Joe Schmo with his chainsaw, and is strong enough to decapitate people with the swing of a shovel, but it gets crazier, since we see that he was able to kill, drag, and lift multiple cows to hang him on a tree, and a cow averages around 1,100 pounds. On top of that, he's also really fast, able to sprint with his chainsaw at around 22 miles per hour. After enough usage, his chainsaw goes into overdrive, which allows him to run even faster at 29 miles an hour. He was able to fight off and kill a group of cops and also killed both of his parents. His mom by crushing her via bear hug. He does walk with a limp since he was shot in the leg, and a dog was able to bite his arm and make it bleed, but he's able to endure and power through the pain. I doubt the Doctor's shocks would have much of an effect on Billy, and he'd definitely be able to shrug off the electricity for long enough to slice him up with his chainsaw.
You gotta pretend that a bear is coming to attack your mom. That's how you get it.
Watch out, you fool!
The Huntress gets gold medal for the non-superpowered characters on this list. No ink powers, no flower meth, just straight heat. And not even some mini buff like the Legion's Feral Frenzy. The entity just picked her up and plopped her into the realm like, okay, I'll hunt Lara Croft, Jill Valentine, Steve Harrington, and Eren Yeager for all of eternity. Yeah, that's cool. She's one of the best combatants on the list, able to mow through groups of armed soldiers with nothing but an axe and some hatchets. She's also been stated to have hunted and killed wolves, bears, and meese to survive off of. Not much for durability since she's so fast she's very rarely ever tagged by anything. There was the time that she charged straight into a guy with a flamethrower that left her pretty burnt up, probably in better shape than the dude was though. She's fast enough to avoid Billy's chainsaw sprints if she doesn't snipe him mid-run. He might be physically stronger, maybe, but her combat ability puts her on a different level. I'd love to put my thunder-thighed shoddy a little higher, but chucking hatchets across the map doesn't really compare to voids of endless despair.
You gonna want to wait about till 2:45 for this shit to be done. Woo!
The Blight started out as a survivor in the realm, trying to figure out how to escape the place while learning more about it. He experimented on dozens of killers both below and above him on the list, but I don't want to take that as him being blatantly stronger than them all, because he certainly had time to learn about each of them and to prepare before capturing them. Hell, he was getting a hold of some of them before he even became the Blight, and I doubt he was throwing down and scrapping with the Trapper or the Huntress mano a mano as Talbot Grimes. As the Blight, he has increased strength and speed at the cost of losing that wonderful jawline of his. He's one of the smartest killers in the realm, and has pretty extensive knowledge on each of them. He also has dozens of different vials of blight juice with different effects, some of which just instantly kill people as seen in his Mori. His higher speed and strength should allow him to beat the Huntress, or at least get a safe syringe to her neck. The Knight's the only killer close to the Skull Merchant and how much I hate going against them. At least he's a cool looking knight, I guess. He's extremely skilled in combat. He and his merry crew were able to annihilate entire villages of armed people with little to no difficulty. While in the realm, he can summon up to 3 of his guards to attack people. He can only summon 1 at a time in-game, but cinematics prove that he can run around with all 3 of them at the same time. He has some of the best gear for fighting, since he's covered head to toe in armor and carries around a big ass sword. The guards are weaker than your average killer, and they only have so long to run around before despawning, but the Knight can just continuously send them out after a short cooldown. They have the same numbers advantage as the Legion, but can actually fight. The Blight and many others below couldn't harm him, and would probably get one-shot by the sword or overwhelmed by the crew's numbers. Yeah, no music allowed, even if there's no lyrics or anything. Just have to find that out the hard way. Re-rendering this whole video! Woohoo! Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise as a whole is what got me into horror and inadvertently got me started on this channel, so I had to put some respect on his name. Exactly what feats are available for this video is unclear since it's the original Halloween version of Michael here, and there's multiple different timelines branching off from this point and more to come. So, fuck it, Composite Michael. He's typically portrayed as a slow-moving brute, but he's surprisingly cunning and powerful to the point that it borders on supernatural, and sometimes it is supernatural. These movies are a mess. He's always seen walking, never breaking off into a sprint, but he does straight up disappear between shots at times, which gives the impression of teleportation, but I'm not convinced. It's possible he's just really fast off screen. He's strong enough to lift grown men into the air with one arm, carry around a large tombstone, flip a car, and punch straight through people. And he has some pretty insane durability. He survived being lit on fire, multiple building destroying explosions, and a barrage of bullets and some dynamite as a cherry on top. He is physically stronger and more durable than the Knight and his guards, but the latter is better equipped and trained, so I wouldn't blame you if you flipped these entries. Michael is sometimes stated to be this immortal being and evil incarnate, but it's more metaphorical than Michael being literal Satan. Just coming off the Halloween Glaze Fest, the Stranger Things chapter is what got me into Dead by Daylight, and with it came the Demogorgon. I'd love to make a joke about your mother's Yahoo, but my mom watches my videos. The Demogorgon has both superhuman strength and durability, strong enough to easily ragdoll people in the air, and is completely impervious to gunfire. It does have a weakness to fire, but that likely wouldn't come into play here. Similar to A Quiet Place's Death Angels, its mouth is weaker than the rest of its body, but still tough enough to withstand being stabbed directly into it. While in the realm, it also has the ability to create portals that it can use to traverse the area. I'd love to give Michael the win here, but aside from having similar feats of durability, the Demogorgon is stronger with better weapons, i.e. big ass claws and teeth.
Stop. Not so fast, y'all. You think you can just up and run away? You crazy. I like to eat people from other planets.
I have no friends and still haven't watched the new Alien movie, so forgive me if there's a feat of the xenomorphs soloing all of fiction. The problem with ranking a xenomorph is how they're depicted depending on the movie. Sometimes they're these big insects that get mowed down by bullets, and other times they're soloing entire groups of armed future soldiers like they're Jason fucking X. Wouldn't make sense for the entity to bring a total dunce, so let's assume this guy's beefy. They're occasionally bulletproof, and durable enough to be thrown through stone by a predator and taking absolutely no damage. Their base kit includes their big, long, black foreheads, mouth, and spear tail. Their mouths and tail are able to pierce through predators and other xenomorphs, scaling their striking power above their durability. And if their durability is somehow bypassed, they bleed literal acid, capable of quickly melting through metal. Similar to the Demogorgon, Xenos get tunnels they can use to traverse the map, but these are set points and aren't chosen by the alien. Although I do believe the Demogorgon might be more durable, a higher end xenomorph just outclasses it in every other category.
That is when the devs will nerf the pig again.
The trailers for The Unknown were some of the scariest things to ever come from DBD. The bar is pretty low though. The found footage, oh my god what is this creature, was the perfect setup for the scariest killer in the game so far. So you can imagine my surprise when we got Bazooka Neck. That being said, The Unknown is powerful, but how powerful is unknown. While in the real world, it was able to make people disappear in the middle of the day or in public areas. Just poof. Gone. Exactly what it is or how its powers work is, not known, so some assumptions do have to be made here. We know it can copy the voices and appearance of those it's taken, albeit in a twisted and distorted way. It can leave fake copies of itself, which it can teleport to at any time. On top of that, he has the aforementioned Bazooka Neck, which he uses to shoot out UVX, or these pink globs that pop and infect whatever it touches in its radius, even through walls. It takes 2 to do damage, but it only takes staring at the guy to make it go away. And the fact that he carries a weapon implies that it does need to be physical against an opponent. But circling back to the people disappearing thing, it can straight up turn people into dust by injecting its tendrils into them as we see in its Mori. I could see its clones confusing a lot of the roster, and its insta-kill ability is a pretty solid win condition. We also don't know what can actually hurt it, but I'm not the type to call out invincibility without a basis. The Unknown could be higher or lower depending on whether or not you believe he could pierce bulletproof skin, and where you'd rank its own durability. But this felt like a safe place to put it until we get more insight from a tome or something.
I know this is going to look like we're destroying everything. Don't worry about it. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
Barely missing out on the top 10 is The Artist. I do main her, so is this ranking bias? The Artist was just an artist before coming to the realm. Go figure. In the realm, she has the ability to create dire crows made of ink and send them in straight lines. A direct hit causes damage, and a non-direct hit, like through a wall, swarms them with crows, and any subsequent hit does damage. She can also summon an ink crow inside of someone and have it burst out of them. She also manipulates the ink coming out of her, since she's able to form it into various weapons coming out of her arms. But before being taken, she had her hands, feet, and tongue removed. And in her time of need, her attackers were swarmed and killed by crows. But the friends that were there were killed too, so I didn't initially believe that she had any direct control over the crows, and I assumed that this was the entity's doing. But as seen in her tome, she called upon these crows to kill Jonah, who was on hook. There was another tome where it seemed to be implied that the artist had a connection to the crows, and could almost see through them. This is a huge deal because of just how many crows are in the realm. That's like the entity's whole thing: black fog, spider legs, and crows. I have to assume that there's a limit on her control over them though, or else we're gonna have to say that the artist has a literal infinite amount of feathery friends at her disposal, which would put her in like the top 5 easily. But it makes much more sense that she has control over the crows in the map that she's in, rather than every crow the entity can muster up all at once. Her ability to keep the Unknown at a range with both her dire crows and actual crows would be huge, and she could just pop him via Mori. The Dredge is a void being purely composed of dark thoughts and emotions. It's able to teleport around to any locker on the map, only slightly slowed down if it teleports to a locked one. It can also leave a remnant behind that it can quickly teleport to, but the remnant does disappear if anything touches it. But what makes the Dredge so dangerous is its void body. Initially made up of all the corpses of a cult that tore itself apart, it can use anything it consumes: knives, screwdrivers, dolls, Maurice, giant crabs, you name it. And whoever it sucks into its void is presumably instantly killed. A lot of people claim that immortal beings, the Dredge included, should be at the top of these kinds of lists because they can never die. But if they can be defeated anyways, then why say they're oh so very powerful, especially since every killer is effectively immortal since the entity can revive whoever. The things that the dredge consumes still follow natural law like decay, since it had to find new things to absorb after its fleshy bits started to wither away. This leads me to believe that the void itself isn't enough, and it needs a physical body to harm people, meaning that someone skilled enough can chop him up before the dredge can kill them. He'd most likely absorb all of the artist's ink attacks, and kill her before she could do any lasting damage. The Oni had the top spot in my original ranking for the non-licensed killers, but if you're paying attention, he is no longer. But he still gets a respectable spot on the list by being one of the most skilled combatants here with a pretty busted ability for this type of setting. Even before gaining superpowers, he was able to kill everyone that came his way. He even killed another skilled samurai while drunk. Grandpa Yamaoka was able to slaughter dozens of armed village people before eventually being overwhelmed by arrows and stab wounds. His skill of course carries over to the realm, but he also gains the ability to absorb blood of wounded people. And once he gains enough, he enters a blood fury mode where he can dash around at high speeds and one-shot survivors with his kanabo. Again, he's fighting killers in this scenario, but he has increased strength and speed in this mode, which would likely buff all of his physicals. And since whoever he's fighting would likely be bleeding, he would only get stronger and stronger as the fight progressed. The dredge is immortal, but he needs a body to damage others. If someone with, let's say, a giant samurai sword were to start chopping him up, the dredge would have to find something else to use. The Oni wins via incapacitation. I've seen a lot of people wank Pyramid Head's power to godlike status because he's the physical manifestation of guilt and he's immortal and whatnot. But he does still have a physical form with physical limitations, I imagine. And everything I could find on him puts him around the superhuman tier. That being said, he is a tough cookie. He can completely no-sell bullets, just complete barrages with no issue. He's also peak human in strength. He picks up people with a single arm and can swing around that big-ass knife he carries around. In the realm, he can drag his knife and leave behind trails that torment whoever steps on it. While tormented, these people can be sent to a cage of atonement unless they're freed from it, which won't happen in a 1v1. While dragging his knife, he can release his punishment of the damned, which sends metal and barbed wire out of the ground and damages whoever it touches. He does seem to have some control over this metal and wire in general, as we see him summon it to grab survivors in his mori. It's these last few abilities that even give him this ranking, since his physicals alone don't really cut it. Every ranking has that one that's really contentious, and I already know this is gonna be it. The Oni most likely wouldn't be able to hurt Pyramid Head, even in his Blood Fury mode, which he wouldn't even get the chance to use. So the Executioner wins via battle of attrition.
Who is this?
I'm Nemo.
Well, Nemo, all new explorers must answer a science question.
Okay, fine, I haven't played the non-Ethan Smith Resident Evils. Arguably one of the most iconic characters to come from the franchise is the Nemesis, now stripped of his flamethrower, bazooka, and giant fish blob form. What he does have is his tentacle. Yep, that's it. Whips can infect people hit by it, and the more he hits people with it, the longer the reach, and presumably its destructive power increases too, as it gains the ability to break pallets and breakable walls in tiers 2 and 3. But in a battle scenario, specifically a 1v1, the Nemesis would be lucky to hit tier 2. Even in its lowest tier though, he was Kool-Aid manning through stone walls and throwing baby Megs at high speeds. Speaking of speed, this guy's fast as hell, with the reaction speed to match. And not to mention his durability, putting him at that same completely bulletproof level as most on this end of the list. But we've also seen him shrug off large explosions. He and Pyramid Head are close in durability, but the Nemesis has the edge in strength, more versatile with his range, and is much faster.
You will give me an egg. I require an egg. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, really? I'm like, no. And then I finally, when I played that game, I'm like, oh, there's eggs.
Wesker being above Nemo might be a bit confusing, but looks can be deceiving. His tentacle is a bit smaller, but it's alright, don't worry, the big ones hurt. He has the same physicals as Nemesis, except better in every category, at least while he's infected with Ouroboros. He has supersonic reaction speed since he's able to dodge repeated gunfire, survives explosions to the face, gunshots, and survives in lava which can reach over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. He can jump far distances, destroy walls and boulders, and on top of all that, he also has a healing factor, just in case anyone did manage to hurt him. If Michael Myers was the one that got me into slashers, Sadako was what kept me away from paranormal horror. The Onryo has telekinesis, the kind the nurse would have if she didn't have a mean case of asthma. She easily snaps necks and throws people around. She can read minds, cause hallucinations and illusions, and even see the future? She can teleport, but this seems to be one of those entity restrictions, as she can only teleport to one of the TVs on the map. On top of this, she has scary stretchy hair powers. But her most powerful ability is her, inexorable stare, where she can just stare at someone and kill them. In the realm, she can manifest and demanifest. While demanifested, she can't be stunned by pallets, likely making her invulnerable to all physical damage. She is effectively immortal, but for all intents and purposes, everyone in Dead by Daylight is essentially immortal. Immortality in this sense would only be something to consider if the character at hand had an ability that allowed them to immediately come back. Wesker's better physicals would be a non-factor due to Sadako's demanifestation, and there's no reason to believe that her stare wouldn't kill him.
It said yes, it is me. Siri, is this the Siri that comes alive at 3 a.m.?
Yes, Kyle. Long time no see.
I heavily downplayed the Singularity in my first video, but upon reinspection, he's easily the most powerful original killer in Dead by Daylight. As a robot, he was designed to aid human on other planets, lifting heavy objects that regular people couldn't, and resisting extreme temperatures like heat and freezing cold. But when Hux got infected and decided to turn evil, we see what it was really capable of. It could easily punch through people and rip faces off. Hux could also dodge repeated gunfire while closing in on the shooter in between each shot, comfortably putting his reaction and movement speed at supersonic levels. But we can highball his reaction speed to faster than the speed of light, since he learned a new alien language and interpreted decillions of lines of code in a nanosecond. A decillion is 1 followed by 33 zeros, and it was stated to not only be one, but multiple decillions in a single nanosecond. There are 1 billion of those in a single second, meaning the Singularity can perceive things at much faster than the speed of light. As for durability, it survived a massive explosion that only seemed to piss it off. The other Hux models should have the same level of durability, and the Singularity was able to destroy them one by one, so his attack should scale around or above the building level explosion. He can set up these goop pods that act as cameras. From these pods, he can shoot and infect others. The Singularity can teleport behind those infected, either by the pods or by teleporting to them directly if he has a line of sight. Once teleported, he goes into overclock mode, where all of his movements are faster, and craziest of all, he isn't stunned by pallets. What this implies is more or less headcanon, but every other killer in the game is affected by pallets, even those with insane durability, leading me to believe that the entity gives power to the pallets for the purpose of the trials, which the Singularity straight up ignores. Being above the Onryo might seem a bit crazy, but the mind tricks and even the stare would likely be ineffective on the Singularity, and even with all of her powers, she was still beaten and killed.
First, I don't make love. I fuck hard.
Bronze medal for the strongest killer goes to the Cenobite, specifically their leader, Pinhead. Base level Pinhead, no Lucifer armor bullshit. He can spawn chains that slow people down, and or straight up rip them apart. Cenobites generally have increased strength, like the ability to punch through concrete, and he's fast enough to react to and catch bullets in his mouth, but what really sets him apart is his reality manipulation. He has the ability to enlarge one of these pins in his head to impale someone, turn water into ice to also impale someone, and use telekinesis to throw a pool stick at someone, also impaling them. Another notable aspect is his ability to summon portals to hell, i.e. out of the entity's realm, where any restrictions placed on him by the entity would be lifted. I do think the Singularity outclasses him physically, and could even resist the battlefield removal with his teleportation, so the Singularity could very well win that fight. He's kind of like a hard counter. But Pinhead's abilities, specifically his reality manipulation, make him the more powerful opponent overall.
Now I got the information that I need, and now I have to break your neck. It's just the way it is. I'm just a messenger.
One of the newer characters to be released and also one of the most powerful is the Lich Vecna. When asking people directly who they thought the most powerful killer was lore-wise, the Lich was typically the one mentioned, some even comparing his power to that of the entity itself. I definitely wouldn't go that far, but Vecna is powerful. But we see in his lore that he submitted to the entity in hopes that he would one day gain its power, so he's nerfed, much like the rest of the killers here. In the realm, he has access to 4 abilities. Fly, which does exactly what you'd expect. Flight of the Damned, which sends 5 skeletons forward to damage whoever they hit. Mage Hand blocks and lifts pallets. And Dispelling Sphere, which sends a giant invisible orb that reveals the location of whoever it touches. All of them have a solid cooldown after each use though, and he's able to react to light-based attacks, giving him FTL reaction speeds. His power and durability are certainly iffy here, since he is on an insane level, but he had to be toned down massively by the entity, along with the fact that he doesn't have access to a large majority of his most powerful abilities. It's still safe to assume that his durability should at least scale to this high end of killers. With the help of the damned, he can straight up murder people, instantly melting them away down to the bone. He also can summon these crystals to break pallets or impale survivors. Pinhead hasn't been shown to be necessarily durable, and the damned are more potent and reliable than Pinhead's chains. And if you were to bring the Lich to Hell, then he would absolutely annihilate Pinhead and the rest of Hell now without the entity's restrictions.
I'll go and never return.
Wait, never return to the hotel?
What? You were supposed to forget the hotel. I just used my powers to erase your memory. I looked straight into your eyes.
That of course leaves us with the newest killer, the Dark Lord Dracula. This of course isn't any depiction of Dracula, but likely the most powerful iteration of the character, Vlad Tepes from Castlevania, the one that could summon holy nukes and make it rain acid blood. We don't see these abilities in game, so I won't include them, but he can use his transformations. He can turn into a wolf, which is just a wolf on steroids, a swarm of bats for increased speed, or a cloud of mist which turns him completely intangible and immune to incoming damage. Most notably though, he has his Hellfire. In game he can erupt fire out of the ground directly in front of him. He can spawn huge flames that engulf entire towns, charge up huge blasts that incinerate the immediate area, or shoot large fireballs directly. He's durable enough to take hits from other powerful vampires, who slice people in half or decapitate them with a single swipe of their claws. He also survived a direct hit from the Morningstar Whip, a chain whip that's able to one-shot other powerful vampires by causing them to literally explode. As for speed, he can react to and move faster than arrows, and other vampires moving at supersonic speeds. He has the classic abilities like teleportation, flight, and bloodsucking, the latter of which replenishes his own health. Vecna and Dracula are pretty close, at least in the entity's realm, but Dracula has more versatile and reliable offensive and defensive abilities, as well as a consistently higher combat speed. The Dark Lord is the most powerful killer in Dead by Daylight. Thanks for watching another video of me rambling about a game I hate to love. Again, do keep in mind that I'm ranking these guys based on how powerful they are within the realm, and taking their nerfs and what abilities they may or may not have into account. But if you think I missed anything, leave it down in the comments. Huge thanks to Macintosh for today's thumbnail. Their Twitter's down in the description, as per usual. Next video will be on something. I don't know. I'll be out of town for a while, so I don't know about any new videos coming out, but I will be streaming the casting of Frank Stone and Zukosis whenever those drop. Subscribe to see when those are out, and I'll see you guys later.